Hey everyone. So, for today's episode of Tentacle Tantra, we are talking with Fluttertal, who is a streamer on Twitch, and Fluttertal has autism. And so, part of what we go into during this interview is sort of like how autism affects them. And then we also talk about this sort of like ever looming anxiety that Fluttertal has that I think is actually really common. And I think one of the most common parts, one of the things that like the most people can relate to, is this feeling of like waiting for the other shoe to drop. That like even when you're feeling good, you're like waiting for the anxiety to come back. And then we go into talking about sort of like how how to that when people say that like cheesy thing about like be in the present, just stay in the present, man, sort of like what that actually means and like the value that it actually has, like sort of how to apply it in your life. And then finally, we talk about like how to identify when there's a deeper root to something, when like you're noticing all of these different sort of like symptoms, but they're all coming from a single root. How to sort of like suss that out and identify that. And I think that it was really cool because Fluttertal, like communicates a little bit differently, and so it was really cool. I really appreciated the way that Fluttertail sort of worked with me to make sure that he was understanding everything that we were talking about, and like made sure that I communicated in a way that was clear to him, and like never sort of like I think that this is something that a lot of people can take away, like when they're working with someone. It's really important that like if you don't understand something, that you're not afraid to clarify, and like on both sides of the relationship. So I hope you enjoy the interview. Here you go. Hey, welcome in.
Yeah.
So, quick question before we sort of officially start is like, what would you like to be called as we talk today?
Um, okay, yeah. What do you mean exactly?
Like, what name would you like me to call you?
Um, well, I don't really mind. You can call me Fluttertal. You can call me Flutter. You can even call me Fluts if you want.
Okay, sounds good. Do you have one that you prefer?
mm, no, I don't have any preference.
Okay, cool. Flutter it is then. And Flutter, uh, is there anything in particular that you sort of had in mind that I might be able to help you with or talk with you about?
Um, I think I told about this when pre when I wanted to do the session, but maybe talking a bit about autism spectrum and anxiety and stuff and everything.
Okay. And so I'll take those. I'll take those one at a time. So then, like with autism spectrum, can you tell me a little bit more about that? What kind of stuff would you like to talk about with that?
Um, uh, Maybe let me think actually.
Sure.
So excuse me for 1 second. So yeah, about autism with how I deal my actual autism situation with other people and the society in general.
Totally. So, what experiences do you have about sort of like dealing with your autism with other people?
Uh, well, well, most of the experience has been with my family. Like it has actually been quite actually quite hard for me to make my family understand what I mean at some point.
Mm,
And yeah, that is something that can be considered that can be considered as an handicap. It's because of because of how I communicate, which is different with neurotypical people, and also the fact that I don't understand certain type of jokes.
Mhm.
It's actually it can be yeah, that's basically the thing. It can be hard for me to communicate with other people in general.
Okay, so what I'm hearing you say is that like because you communicate in a way that's a little bit different than how sort of like neurotypical individuals would communicate, it can make it really hard to like communicate effectively. Does that sound right?
Yeah, and it's actually because it's actually because it's been hard for me to comprehend nonverbal communication, basically because of that.
Okay. So you have a hard time like reading body language and things like that, or like when people are being like sarcastic or joking, like it's hard for you to sort of pick up on those cues.
Mm, uh, I mean, I mean, I have been dealing with I've been dealing with it with my family many often, so I can I can still understand understand sarcasm and everything,
Uh huh.
but yeah, anything that is nonverbal, which is for example the body language or anything,
Mm-hmm.
it's actually still hard for me to understand those things.
Yeah, it's something that you sort of have to like manually learn, whereas like others seem to sort of intuitively grasp it. Does that sound right?
Uh, yeah, kind of.
Is there
Yeah.
anything that doesn't sound right in that?
Um, okay. Okay. Yeah, I don't understand what you said here.
Sure, sure. So like basically one of the things that I do a lot when I talk with people is I just sort of like echo back what they're saying so that I make sure that I'm understanding them correctly. And so I just want to make sure that what I echoed back to you and like in the idea that um that what other people seem to sort of like intuitively pick up on with their like in terms of like nonverbal communication, you actually have to like work really hard and like work to sort of learn that rather than just sort of like naturally understanding it. And I wanted to make sure that that sounded right to you and that I wasn't sort of like missing anything that you were trying to express in that. Does that make sense?
Uh, yeah, I get it, and and it's actually yeah something that I'm still experiencing, like nonverbal communication and everything.
Mm-hmm.
I'm actually still training on that. That's the thing.
Yeah, totally. And so what I'm curious, like what kind of stuff do you do to train on that?
Um, well, basically it's uh, basically it's kind of a little bit of kind of a little bit funny now that I'm thinking. It's basically I'm doing the copycat, and I'm just doing exactly what I what has been what has been done in term on body language,
Yeah.
and since and since I did like a theater show or something,
Mm-hmm.
um, and yeah, something like that.
Yeah.
It has been kind of easy for me to do that kind of stuff.
Okay, so that's cool. So what I hear you're saying is that like um you through things like theater and stuff like that, you've actually found how to sort of like mimic the or like copy, like you say, like copycat, sort of like
Yeah.
copy the typical like sort of body language and things like that 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 most people do. Does that sound right?
Uh, yeah, and and in addition to the body language, also the emotions also there, because it's it's another thing that I found hard for me to comprehend as well.
Is emotions in general?
Yeah, basically.
Gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. And so then, can you tell me a little bit about where the anxiety comes into play with all of this?
Uh, actually, actually, it's hard to answer to that question, because I don't think that's something that came with autism. But yeah, I have a few theory. I have a few theory about that. My anxiety could be either because of some of my friends, uh, some of my stress, which is actually stacking up and everything.
What
And
what about your friends do you think might be causing anxiety?
uh, I mean, that's the thing about that. It's because I need to talk to people. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm gonna feel good in that case. And and when I get to the point when I have to stop to someone in particular because I talk to them too much, uh, it's still really hard for me to deal with it.
I don't think can you explain that for me one more time? I don't think I quite understood what you meant there.
Um, yeah, basically the thing is, I'm I I feel like the urge I feel like the urge to talk to my friends like all the time. Otherwise, I don't know if I'm gonna feel good for the rest of the day. And it happens it happens many times to for me uh, to have to stop talking to those friends because I talk to them too much. And
So it sounds like excuse me, excuse my cat. So
yeah,
it sounds like there's some sort of like need that you feel to talk to your friends like all the time.
yeah,
What
basically.
what are you and what are you afraid will happen if you don't talk to your friends?
Um, I don't know. Actually don't know if it's something like a fear or something. But yeah, basically, if I don't talk to my friend, feel like I feel like yeah, basically not gonna feel good for the rest of the day, basically.
Is it it's not like I'm afraid if I don't talk to my friend that like they're not going to be my friend anymore. It's more just like no, dude, like I want to talk to my friend because they're my friend and I like talking with my friend and that's sort of like what I enjoy doing. And so if I don't do that, I don't feel good. Does that sound right?
Yeah, kind of, and it's kind of sad for me to talk about this, but that thing actually made me messed up like many times, because that's because of this behavior that that I feel that I felt. I mean, like I was acting toxic to my friends, and that's something I didn't want to happen, basically.
So do you, the acting toxic toward your friends, it was the toxicity that like you were just always wanting to talk to them or was the toxicity something else?
Uh, yeah, it's just a suspicion, but I think it's more like because I want to talk too much to my friends. I I feel like I feel like I'm getting toxic to them.
I see. So yeah, so it sounds like what you're saying is that because of how much you want to talk to your friends, like how sort of like deep that urge is, that it almost becomes toxic because like your friends need space, and like it's toxic for you because you sort of like can't be okay without talking to your friends. Does that sound right?
Yeah, basically.
Okay. Okay. And so why do you think that you have this sort of like, yeah, I mean, it almost sounds like an addiction. Would that be like too exaggerated of a word, that like I need to talk to my friends like every day?
Yeah.
So like why do you think that, where do you think that came from, Flutter?
Uh, I don't know. Maybe probably being on Discord for too much. I mean, I mean that's the thing. That's I I many of the friends that are still my friends actually. Many of them I uh, I get I got the occasion to talk to them on Discord, and since then I got some sort of like a friendship to them, and at some point that that friendship was just like sealed to the point that I can't unseal that friendship, and if I do unseal them, then I'm not feeling good about this.
Okay, so what I hear you saying is that like because of Discord, where you had this sort of like constant access to your friends, just like 24/7, like anytime, day or night, you could just sort of like pop into Discord and be like, "Hey, what's going on?" And like you had like friends to respond to you. That like when it comes to sort of more personal relationships that aren't sort of more like the like community sort of like Discord based relationships, that like because you can't have that same sort of like 24/7 access that you had like when you were just like hanging out in Discord, it 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 feels like, oh, but like I had this before. I had this like Discord like constant access anytime I want, instant gratification access before, and now like in my personal relationships I don't have that. Does that sound right?
Uh, yeah, kind of. It's actually yeah, I can still have fun in real life, like not talking about Discord at this moment. But yeah, uh, I think like I think it's yeah more like Discord which make me feel that way.
Do you feel like you have that need with your IRL friends? Do you feel like when you're, like with your IRL friends, do you feel like you need to like talk to them constantly, or else you don't feel okay?
Um, yeah, yeah, that happened to them as well. A little bit less since I kind of dropped my studentship or anything. But yeah, I can tell that it happened at this moment.
When you say you dropped your studentship, does that mean that you were in school and you're no longer in school?
Uh, yeah, basically, I was in school. Then in university, I got
Mm-hmm.
my I got my third year grade or something like that.
Okay.
And then because I couldn't afford for a fourth year, I just kind of interrupt my studentship.
Okay. Gotcha. And what were you studying in school, Flutter?
Uh, okay, yeah, okay, yeah, I don't understand though.
What? So I'm not sure if it's the same. You're in France, right?
Yeah, I'm in France.
Okay. I'm not sure if it's the same in France, but in the US, like when you go to university, you're studying for a particular thing. So like I might go to school to like study psychology, to be like a therapist or something. Were you studying something in particular, or were you just sort of like getting your like general education out of the way?
Um, yeah, there is like a thematic a thematic studentship for university, and then I'm talking about my case, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And and uh, and yeah, in that particular theme, there is everything covering that. There is everything that is covering yeah, that thing in particular. And yeah, for the example, my thing here was computer science.
Oh, cool.
So yeah, it was like studying how computers works, how
Yeah.
software works, how to like program or anything.
That's really cool. That's awesome. Yeah, computer science is like, man, that's like the way of the future. Like if you want to
Yeah,
make a lot of money, like go for computer science. Way to go, dude.
yeah,
Um
basically.
yeah, and then could you tell me a little bit more? You had said like one of the things that's really hard for you is sort of like expressing yourself to your family. Could you tell me a little bit about sort of what it was like growing up for you?
Um, I mean, I had I had a decent life while growing up.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, it was basically because I had a lot of a lot of help from my mother and from my schools I attended to. Like I had someone who, I had people who were helping me with homework, comprehending uh, comprehending stuff like
Yeah.
things that have to be done in a homework and anything.
Yeah.
And I can tell that actually helped me in the past.
Good, good. That's great to hear. And then, is your father in your life?
Uh, yeah, kind of. I'm not talking too much about him because he's um, he's not with my mom for a long time.
Okay.
I we live like in like 200 kilometers of distance or anything.
But
I think
when you were
it's like
growing up, like he wasn't super involved.
um, I mean, it's basically he was involved, but not that much compared to my mom.
I gotcha. Gotcha. Okay. So, and then any siblings?
Yeah, basically, I have two older brothers.
Okay. How is that?
Um, yeah, yeah, decent as well. It's it's like being the youngster of
The yeah, like
youngster
I,
of the
I I'm the
family.
I'm the baby of my family too.
Yeah,
Yeah, for sure. Well, cool. So it sounds like it sounds like you had a pretty good childhood. Like your mom helped you a lot with sort of like understanding like sort of what was going on and everything. And how long ago did you're living on you moved away from your parents?
uh, no, I'm still living with my mom at this
Okay.
moment.
Okay, awesome, awesome. And so like does she still help you sort of like understand things as you go through um life?
Mm. Uh, yeah, she still helps me with that, but 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 yeah, as time as time happens, it it feels like it's not that much necessary. I mean, there are many things that I still need her help, and I would thank her for that.
Mm-hmm.
But for stuff like basic thing what to eat, and how to cook and everything,
Yeah.
I think that is something that I can handle myself.
Totally, totally. I'm more am sort of asking about like one of the things that you talked about earlier in the conversation is that like one of the things that is difficult or like gives you anxiety is sort of like the trouble expressing yourself. And so I was just curious, like, does your mom help you express yourself sometimes?
Um, yeah, she was helping. She was helping me when talking about excuse me, when talking about yeah, expressing myself, talking about talking about what I think, what I feel, and everything.
Gotcha. Cool. And I'm curious, like, how are you feeling right now? Like, you're expressing yourself a lot, and so like, how are you feeling right now?
Well, right now I'm actually feeling kind of good. Well, well, actually, uh, I would say better than the other days before, to be
Okay.
honest.
Any idea why?
The, yeah, that's basically anxiety and stuff, which manifested on me, and that's the thing. I made a I made a pretty long message on Twitter when talking about uh, my actual mental health and things like that.
Mm-hmm.
And since I got the need to talk about that stuff, yeah, I'm feeling kind of decent now.
Oh, that's really cool. So what I'm hearing you say is that by sort of like getting it out into the world, by sort of like putting it out on Twitter the way that you did, it actually sort of helped you to feel better instead of having it all sort of like cooped up inside. Does that sound right?
Yeah, um, but yeah, that's something that thing when I finally talked about it, it actually it actually took me time to get the actual courage to just talk about it, basically.
Totally.
Because yeah, that's something I don't really like to talk about much in public. I'm just I'm just trying to be like, hey, I'm kind of happy right now, thank you.
Yeah, just sort of
uh
like generally happy all the time is the way you try to sort of like present yourself.
yeah,
Yeah.
basically.
Yeah. Well, Flutter, I mean, one of the things that I want to say is that like I think there's a couple there's a few things actually that I think are really cool here. The first thing is that like
Yeah.
during our conversation, like I think that you've been expressing yourself really well. Like I mean, there've been a couple times that I've had to clarify some things, but like that happens in all conversations that I have. And then the next thing is that I think that you've discovered a really cool sort of trick in terms of like when you're feeling anxious. And I don't know that I sort of have the like full scope of your anxiety yet, but when you're feeling anxious, like the idea of sort of like getting it out into the world and sort of like getting it outside of you and sort of letting it out, like really that's what sort of like therapy or life coaching or whatever is all about. Is I mean there's some other aspects to it as well, but a big part of it is just sort of like allowing people to like talk about what they're going through, and by talking about it they sort of feel better. And I think you sort of discovered that on your own, and that's pretty cool. And
Yeah.
then the last thing is that like you had mentioned sort of like I it was hard, and I had to sort of like have courage to do it because I sort of try to be this sort of like generally happy guy. And I just want to like get on my soapbox for a second and say that I think that it's really good. Like we need more people that are out here sort of expressing how they're really feeling, because I think one of the dangers of like social media and sort of like living online in a way that we do in large part now is that like we only see people's like highlight reel. Like we don't see what people are really going through. And so the idea of like more people sort of expressing how they're really feeling and sort of like showing their true selves, I think is one, I do think it's really brave, and I commend you for it. And two, I think that like it's a good thing for the world. Like we need more of it.
Yeah, and yeah, yeah. The thing is, even if I talk about it, even if I find the courage to actually talk about my anxiety,
Mm-hmm.
uh, I always feel like uh, I always feel like actually actually something that I'm scared about. I'm scared about the thing that it's not gonna last really long, and the yeah, circle is gonna happen again. That
Mm.
is something. That is something I'm kind of scared right now.
Okay, so that's brilliant. So I think that it's, first of all, it's something that a lot of people go through, which is that like they feel, I'm gonna draw like a little diagram. Hold on. So like they feel anxious, and then they do something that gets them over the anxiety. Okay, and then what happens is they're over the anxiety, and yet they still feel anxious because they're afraid, they're waiting for the other shoe to drop. They say like, "Oh, I feel better right now, but like there's no way I'm going to continue to feel better. Like I'm sure it's going to come back." Waiting for anxiety to come back. It can't stay this good. I'm sure it's going to come back. And so then what ends up happening is we go right back to anxious again. So I drew this little diagram. I don't know if you can actually see it, but it starts out with anxiety, right? And then like you do something that gets you over the anxiety, and that's great. And then once you get over the anxiety, then you're sitting there and you're like, "Oh no, I'm going to get anxious again." And so because you're like thinking about and worrying about getting anxious again, then you get anxious again. Does that
Yeah,
make
yeah.
sense? And
Uh,
so go ahead. Go ahead.
yeah, that's basically what is what is happening right now.
Yeah.
I'm feeling good and actually decent right now,
Good.
but I'm I can't promise like it's gonna last for longer. Like I'm gonna like something like I'm gonna get anxious again or anything.
Mhm. Yeah. And so strangely enough, I think that the sort of like solution to this, and it's definitely like much easier said than done, but I think that the sort of like solution to this is the like cheesy idea of sort of like living in the present. And I know that seems like super, you know, corny, but the reason that I say that is because like if something does, if the anxiety does come back in the future, then it comes back in the future, and like we can sort of like cross that bridge when we come to it. But as long as we are living in the future, like we're always going to be waiting for the other shoe to drop. Like something can always go wrong in the future, right? And so like
Yeah,
I know that I experience this, especially with like work and stuff. Like when it's, like for instance today, when I when I think about how it's Saturday, and then like I had a 3 day weekend this weekend, and so I was like, oh, like it's Saturday, that means like tomorrow I'm gonna do my stream, and then like I have a tantra tomorrow as well, and then I got to go back to work, and I started feeling anxiety about all of that stuff lining up, about like the stream and then the tantra and then work, and then like I'm back at work for another week and I have to make it through another week,
yeah,
and and I sort of caught myself in that and said like, oh, like you're sort of like you're living in the future right now, right? Like you're thinking about the future, and you're not instead of just sort of like enjoying the time that you have now. And so that's sort of what, like, I would really, whenever you feel the sort of the anxiety of like, oh, like I'm feeling good right now, but what if the anxiety comes back? What I would really encourage is just to notice it. Like, you don't have to like change anything. You don't have to like do anything. It's really just about seeing it, because what can happen is it starts to become like unconscious. Like we just are always waiting for the other shoe to drop, and we don't even realize that we're doing it. And so if we can start to notice that it's happening, what's cool about like awareness and noticing things is that just by noticing them, you help to change them. So every time you can sort of notice like, oh, like I'm feeling anxious about getting anxious in the future, it's going to help to sort of like unravel that ball a little bit. Does that make sense?
Um, yeah, I'm actually trying to understand what you're saying, but yeah, as far as far as I understood, it's something that can be worth trying here.
So are you able to tell me anything about like what parts didn't make sense to you,
Mm,
or is it just all of it?
um, yeah,
Just
yeah,
all of it?
I might need a little bit of a recap if you don't mind.
Yeah, sure, absolutely. So I think from what we've talked about so far, you sort of get this part, right? You sort of get like how the anxiety is working, right?
Yeah, I'm getting this.
Okay, so then what I was saying is that what can happen is that cycle becomes like you don't even realize that it's happening. Where like, yes, you're feeling anxious about feeling anxious in the future, but eventually like it starts to become so regular that you're always waiting for the next anxiety like attack. Like, am I making sense so far?
Yeah.
Okay. So the sort of like trick to not having that happen is just noticing whenever it does happen. Whenever you notice that you're like, oh, I'm feeling anxious about feeling anxious in the future, you just sort of notice it. You just sort of say, like, oh, this is happening right now. I'm feeling anxious about feeling anxious. And the more that you can sort of just like catch it and notice it, the more it's going to sort of like, the more it's going to make it happen less. Does that make sense?
Mm, so, so, so like if I notice when I'm getting anxious, uh, it's gonna be a little bit easier for me to get the solution of not getting anxious. Is that what you said or something?
The noticing is kind of the solution itself. Like, yeah, like I think that you're on the right track. I think that if you just work on sort of like no like sort of like pulling back. So like when you notice that you're feeling anxious about being anxious, you can sort of like look at it from far away. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it there.
Yeah. Yeah, and what will happen is that just by doing that, it'll sort of help to stop the anxiety from happening. Because what it sounds like is really happening is that you're getting anxious because you're like time traveling. You're going to the future, right? You're like, "Oh, I'm feeling good right now, but in the future I might not be feeling good." And so every time that you sort of notice, like, oh, I'm feeling anxious about the future right now, I'm feeling anxious about getting anxious, it's going to ground you in the present. It's going to sort of like put you back in your current time. Does that make sense?
Yeah, I get it.
Okay. So that's sort of what I was saying about that. Um, one of the other things that I wanted to see if I could help a little bit with, before like we have to like wrap up or whatever, is the anxiety over sort of like feeling like you need to talk to your friends in order to be okay. So I'm curious, Flutter, when you sort of sit with yourself, like when you sort of are by yourself, what happens? Like what comes up for you when you're by yourself and you're not reaching out to friends?
Mm, well, depends on the situation. If if I find something that I can do, if I find something that I can do, I can still cope with it, like watching a stream, interacting uh, with any other person or anything.
Yeah.
The, but yeah, that's the thing. I'm always trying to find a solution about what I can do, but without the guarantee of keeping that thing over time. Like if I do something to deal with my anxiety, I don't know if it's gonna I don't know if it's gonna last for any long. And when when it happens, I'm like, wait, what can I do? And that's and that's and that can be and that can be at this moment when I can't find any solution, and I'm like, well, I'm lost. And that's where the anxiety still manifests as well.
So Flutter, this is really good. This is really sort of cool to see, because what I'm hearing you say is that even the like need to reach out to your friends is the same thing that we've been talking about. This same sort of like fear of the future. And correct me if I'm wrong. This is just like a hypothesis, but what I'm hearing you say is that every time that you every time that you like reach out to your friends, or you find a Twitch stream to watch, or you find something to do, it's sort of a way to like escape this ever sort of lurking anxiety that is like going on deep inside of you. Does that sound right?
Yeah, that's something that happens here.
Yeah. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense to me, Flutter. And so what's really scary, and I'm also really hopeful about, is that, Flutter, I think that in order to overcome this, in order to sort of like conquer this, we have to sort of like come face to face with your anxiety. Like we have to sort of like stop like putting that beast back in its cage and sort of let it come out and like see what happens. How do you feel about that?
Uh, well, I'm trying to get the image about the cage and everything.
Yeah. So okay, great, great. Thank you for asking for clarification. I really appreciate it. So right now, I think what's happening is like imagine that your anxiety is like a beast, like a monster of some kind. Okay. And I think that what's happening right now is like it's in a cage, and every time the anxiety tries to come out, you're like, no, 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 no. I'm going to go reach out to my friends, or I'm going to go watch a Twitch stream, or I'm going to go like play a game, or I'm going to go work on something. And so what I'm saying is, I think that in order to like have this sort of like toxicity that you're feeling with your friends stop, and to have this sort of like anxiety about getting anxious in the future stop, what really needs to happen is you need to let the anxiety out of its cage and just sort of like listen to it, like have a conversation with it. And I think that this has been that you've already started doing this to some extent. I think that it's what happened when you put your feelings out there on Twitter. When you put out that long Twitter post, you sort of like let the anxiety talk. You let the beast out of its cage and like let it say what it wanted to say, and then you started feeling better. Does that make sense?
Yeah, yeah, makes sense though.
Yeah. So what's really cool to me, because I don't know, I'm a nerd. But what's really cool to me is that like do you see how all of this sort of ties together? Like it's all really sort of this central source of like this anxiety that's deep inside of you that we want to sort of like let out. And it, I don't know what'll happen, Flutter, but if we do continue to work together, one of the things that I would really like to like delve into more is where that anxiety is coming from, what that anxiety is. And I think that one of the best ways to do that, just as like something for you going forward, even if we don't continue to work together, is having conversations with that anxiety. And I know that seems sort of weird. It seems like sort of a weird idea, but like one of the biggest mistakes that I think that people make when they're trying to sort of overcome their issues is they see their issues as issues instead of as solutions to the things that they've been struggling with. So like this anxiety that's deep inside of you, I don't know where it originated. I don't know where it originally came from. But what I am almost positive of is that it developed in response to something that happened to you throughout your life, or maybe many
Yeah,
things that happened to you throughout your life, and it was there to sort of keep you safe. It was how you adapted to whatever your environment was. And so changing the perspective of looking at it like something that's bad, something that's hurting you, because you're right, like it is causing you problems now, but instead of looking at it as an issue and instead looking at it as like an outdated helper, like an outdated like a piece of outdated software, right? Like
yeah,
it was a good operating system. It was a really good operating system for when it was around. And now like we just need to update the OS. You know what I mean?
yeah, I get it.
Yeah. Um what do you what thoughts are going around in your head? Tell me what you're thinking about right now.
Uh, uh, well, the other thoughts about the other thoughts that I have uh, still involves anxiety in some capacity.
Mm.
Uh, but like I just want to make a short precision about what has been said here.
Mhm.
It's because we talked a little more about how I do my anxiety and everything like that.
Yeah.
But if I have to make a precision about this, it's uh, if if I'm getting if I'm getting anxious at the moment, I uh, I already know what makes me anxious, and I think that's because I know this that I can adapt myself to deal with my anxiety, even though it's still hard to do that stuff. Um, but yeah, if I but yeah, basically, if I'm anxious, I know what is happening that makes me feel anxious.
I want to make sure that I'm understanding you right. Are you sort of summarizing what we've talked about, or are you telling me something new that like whenever anxiety comes up, you know what it is that you're feeling anxious about?
Yeah, yeah, that's kind of like it, and that's kind of like it. I know I may not know when anxiety is gonna come up, But when it's coming up, I know what makes me feel anxious.
Okay. And can you give me an example of like something that a time that anxiety came up and you were like, I know what I'm anxious about.
Well, to be honest, there can be many things that can make me feel anxious. That can be my friends. That can be the moment when I'm supposed to stream because I might not feeling too good right now about streaming.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, but there is other things that can trigger my anxiety, and I didn't talk too much about it, and basically it's like video game competitions or esports for short.
Are you saying that video game competitions and esports competitions make you feel anxious?
Um, yeah, kind of. It's it's more like I wanted in the first place to do that kind of stuff, but I knew at the same time that it came with some kind of a price or anything. It's because it's basically before or participate in any of those competition. There's still that anxiety that came to me uh, like um, like I don't know if I'm going I don't know if I'm gonna win this or this or this or if I'm gonna succeed to perform or if I lose, am I gonna be able to analyze why I lost at this moment?
Yeah.
I kind of those stuff here.
Yeah. Yeah. No, Flutter, that makes a lot of sense to me. So I have a question for you, and that is that when you feel anxious about like like some competition, or you feel anxious about sort of like that you might be like reaching out to your friends too much, or if you feel anxious about that you're like having trouble expressing yourself,
Hmm.
do all of those anxieties feel the same to you? Do they feel like the same sort of like beast? Does that question make sense?
Yeah, it still makes sense here. Um, and yeah, I don't make any difference about any kind of anxiety. For me, uh, they could be uh, they could be on they could be 1,001 reasons of why I'm feeling anxious,
Mm-hmm.
but
It's always the same
for
anxiety, right?
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
always the same here.
Beautifully said, Flutter. So what that says to me, and you tell me if you agree, but if you could have 1,001 reasons for being anxious and ultimately they all feel the same, it all feels like the same anxiety, what that says to me is that there's some kind of deeper root that is stemming all of these different things that make you feel anxious. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it makes sense.
So what I would encourage you to do, and what we will do together if if you decide that we continue to that you want to continue to work together, is we're going to sort of start like we're going to start up here with like, I'm feeling particularly anxious about this competition coming up, and we'll sort of start to like unravel that ball until eventually we get down to whatever this root is, to whatever is happening down here that is sort of stemming all of these different anxieties for you. Because the thing is that there, like, it makes sense to me that there are all of these different things that are causing you anxiety, but what's interesting is that other people can do some of those things and not have anxiety about them. And so like what what again, like what that says to me is that like whatever is at the root of it is sort of what needs to be addressed. and we can sort of use these like arms, these different plants that have grown from this seed to sort of like trace the origin back to find what is causing the sort of root of the anxiety. Does that make sense? I
Uh,
got a little
yeah,
I got a little crazy there. I
no,
did I
no, that's okay. I understand what you meant here.
Okay, cool, cool. So, real quick, we're almost at an hour. Is there anything that you really wanted to ask me about or sort of like delve deeper into before we sort of wrap up here?
Um, mm,
And it's okay if not.
uh, and I don't have anything in mind there
Cool.
of what I can say.
Cool, cool. And would you like to sort of like tell people where they can find you? Like would you like to like tell people about your stream or anything like that?
Uh, okay, like that's the thing. I don't really. That's the thing. I don't exactly know what I can say at this moment here. But
It's totally up to you. You don't have to, but like I just always like to give because I know that you're a content creator as well, and so I always like to when I have content creators here for public tantras, I always like to sort of give them the opportunity to if they want to like tell everyone a little bit about like what kind of stream they do and like their Twitch link if people want to find you. But you don't have to if you don't want to.
I can do that. I don't mind it.
Cool, cool. Yeah. So tell people where they can find you.
Uh, so sorry. So yeah, basically I stream on Twitch. I'm a variety streamer. I'm a variety streamer uh, who is uh, uh, who is mainly interested in like fighting games and stuff. Uh, like I like I play all like I play those games with my community as well,
Cool.
and 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 that's kind of cool. We just have fun playing those games with the community, with the viewers and everything.
What's your like if you had to choose like a top fighting game, what's like your favorite fighting game?
Um, I don't know if I don't know if anyone would know about this game, but I can try this. Them's fighting hurts.
What is it?
Them's fighting hurts.
No, no, I don't know it. It sounds it what is it like is it a computer? Is it on the computer?
Yeah, it's on the computer. It was supposed to be like it was supposed to be like a My Little Pony fighting game at some point before before it got canceled by the original creators of the show, and then they had to redo all of the stuff to make them fighting hairs happen.
Cool, cool. And your link is twitch.tv/fluttertal, right? Fluttertal.
Yeah, that's my Twitch.
Cool. Awesome. Awesome. And then if it's okay with you, I just want to sort of like give a couple of like a couple of like sort of a summary of like what we talked about today for anyone who's like watching who might benefit from that, and then also for you
Yeah.
in case it'll help you to sort of like conceptualize everything. Um, and then afterward, I usually will sort of like type up sort of like a summary of what we talked about and like send it over to you so that you have that and you can look back on it if you want. Is that okay?
I'm okay with that.
Cool. Um, okay, so the main sort of like thrust of what we talked about today, I think, is that there's this sort of like ever-present anxiety, and it comes from a lot of different places. We sort of touched on like that because of your autism, you have some trouble like expressing yourself, and that can cause some anxiety. It's hard to pick up on like nonverbal clues, and that can cause some anxiety. And then there's this really interesting part of like that you have this sort of need to like reach out to your friends all the time, and then like if you're not reaching out to your friends, you sort of have to occupy your mind in some other way with like watching a Twitch stream or playing a video game or just doing something to sort of like keep your mind occupied. Because what happens if you don't keep your mind occupied is that anxiety beast sort of comes out of its cage, and you're like, I don't want that anxiety. I don't like that anxiety beast. I don't want it there. So I'm going to shove it back in its cage, and I'm going to go do something so it doesn't come out. And we also talked about this idea that even when you're feeling good, even when like you put out this Twitter post that like made you feel better, even once you feel better, there's this sort of looming feeling of like, oh, but like when is the beast gonna try to get out of its cage again? And so we talked about this idea that what you're really doing there is you're sort of time traveling, right? You're sort of like looking into the future instead of like existing in the present. And every time that you do that, like the anxiety has already come out. Like while you're distracted looking at the future, the anxiety beast is like coming in from behind. And so like the trick to sort of like to sort of keep that from happening is to just start noticing whenever you time travel, whenever you realize that you've like gone into the future, just be like, oh, I went into the future, and that will immediately sort of ground you in the present. And then the last thing that we sort of touched on is that all of this anxiety all stems from some sort of single root that we didn't have time to sort of uncover today, but that like because all of these anxieties sort of feel the same, no matter what's causing the anxiety, it's always ultimately the same anxiety. That as the noticing your anxiety is sort of the first step to just sort of giving you some relief on the anxiety, where like it's not going to be this ever haunting thing. But the next step after that, as you sort of continue to do that, is now to like stop looking at the anxiety as a beast, and instead start looking at it as sort of an outdated OS, and do some sort of like it's time for some software updates. And in order to do those software updates, we need to look at where that, like, who wrote that OS. Because it was some like basically like a younger version of you that wrote that OS, and we need to like get to know what was going on with him at that time, so that we can sort of like make an informed decision about like how to update that operating system. And then, well, first let me just say, any questions about any of that? I think that it was really just stuff that we had all already talked about before, but anything that you want to like clarify or anything like that.
Um, not uh, not much. Not much anything. I like to clarify. I think I already covered kind of what I wanted to talk in the first place.
Awesome, cool. And so then the last thing that I want to do is just sort of a shameless plug for myself, which is just that which is just sort of that, these public tantras, like the one that you're watching now, if you're watching on YouTube or whatever, are free, and they're sort of like a one-time free trial, so to speak. And then after that, or like if you want to start out right away in like and this is not directed at you, Flutter, but I mean, you're also welcome. If you would like to sign up for a private one, those are paid. And so like Flutter, if you'd like to continue this work, like that's absolutely something that we could talk about or do. No pressure or anything, but just like want to float it out there. And then for anyone who's watching, like if that's something that you're interested in, there'll be like a link down in the description, and you can sign up for that. And then, all the usual YouTube stuff of like liking and subscribing and all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you so much, Flutter. I'm really sort of, I don't know. I don't know how you're feeling, but I'm really sort of excited for you, because I think that whenever things all sort of like tie together nicely like this, whenever like it's all sort of everything sort of connects together, it gives me a lot of hope about like one, that I can provide some value to you, that I can be helpful to you, and two, that like this is something that you can like conquer, that you can like overcome, so to speak, or like integrate, or whatever, however you want to put it. So thank you so much for doing this with me. I really appreciate it, Flutter.
And that's okay. That was a pleasure for me as well to do that tantra.
Good. Well, I'm glad. I'm glad. All right. Any last words before we say goodbye?
Uh, uh,
Viva la revolution.
yeah, sure. Yeah, sure.
Perfect. Perfect. All right. Good night, everybody. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thanks.